So today we have a special spotlight session, which is sponsored by the national nonprofit organization, Immigration Voice. Immigration Voice is a nonprofit initiative working to alleviate the problems faced by legal, high-skilled future Americans in the United States. The current focus is on legislative solutions to address the long green card backlog faced by immigrants from India. Talking to us about this organization is Gokul. He's a Bitsin from the 2005 batch who later on immigrated to the US for his master's at Stanford and is currently working at Facebook. Welcome, Gokul.
Thank you so much, Pratyush. Thanks for having me.
So, Gokul, how did you find out about Immigration Voice and what motivated you to volunteer for them?
Yeah, so I found out about Immigration Voice, or IV in short, about 10 years back through my colleague at Oracle. That was my first job out of grad school. At the time, I didn't realize the severity of the green card backlog problem for Indian immigrants. And a few years passed by, and that's when I really understood how the employment-based green immigration system in the US works and how the 7% country caps meant that Indian immigrants would have to wait for 150 years for their green card. And apart from individuals who are waiting, in many cases, I also came to know about kids who are actually born in India and who moved to the US along with their parents when they were toddlers and are now facing the scenario of aging out of their dependent status. So basically, when they reach 21 years old, they are not eligible to be on their dependent visa anymore. And so now they have to change their status to student visa F1 or H1B and then wait in the same line as their parents. So these injustices and discrimination really motivated me to work as a volunteer at Ivy and not be just a donor. Currently, I lead the efforts of Ivy in the state of California, which actually has the largest number of representatives in the US Congress. Our focus currently is on a bill called Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act, which removes this discriminatory country cap and creates a first come, first served line for all immigrants without discriminating them by their country of birth and thus treating everyone equally. So this bill passed the House, HR 1044, which passed the House with huge majority, with 365 votes, and 85% of the House of Representatives voted for it. And we are currently working on getting it through the Senate. It's the bill S386, where there's one senator, Senator Durbin from Illinois, who's currently blocking the bill.
So I really like the story, but let's go for some recent developments because in recent weeks, we have actually been hit with a double whammy, at least for a lot of folks here. So first of all was the executive order that suspended all new work visas. And the latest one, which actually would force F1 and M1 students to return back if the university decides to move to a completely online only model for the semester, which because of the COVID crisis is something that might happen for safety concerns. So could you give some more insight into the impact of these two huge changes?
Yeah, so first of all, I should just state that I'm not a lawyer. So for individual cases, one should consult one. But I think the F1 executive order, which was done recently, has a huge impact not only on graduate students who are here, but also has an impact on the aging out kids that I mentioned before. Because now, even though those kids change their status to F1 to stay with their now they can't even stay with their family in the US, and now they're forced to go back to India, where they may not even have a family or they don't even speak the language, unfortunately. And regarding the work visa executive order, when someone actually is on a work visa like H1B, when they travel back home to India or China, for example, and if their visa stamp is expired, they have to actually go to the US consulate to get a new stamp. And this has always been a source of concern for Indian immigrants because they have to go through this process at least once every 3 years. I'm not even talking about the spouse's stamping, but it's an addition. And so there are many instances where the stamping gets delayed or rejected, and which has always resulted in complications for not only the employment of the individual, but also has resulted in family separation because the husband or wife is stuck in India while the kids are in the US or vice versa. And so with this executive order or the new executive order, this has become a lot more widespread as a policy rather than individual instances. And thus, at this point, there is really a huge risk for anyone who's on a work visa in the US to leave the country. Because it has actually resulted in kind of a travel ban for immigrants who are from India, because now they have to really decide between caring for their kids or the family in the US versus visiting their parents who back home who are aging, who might have some illness. And this is all in addition to the stress of COVID. And so you can imagine the plight of the Indian immigrants who are going through this right now. And
Yeah.
so the impact will be actually pretty severe because it's come to a precipice at this point where unless Congress acts and fixes these discriminatory policies, it's going to be very bad. And so,
Okay. Yeah. So would you like to share with us like what has been your biggest challenge since you've been working with Immigration Voice?
yeah. I think there are a few challenges, but the biggest one is the awareness among the immigrant community, especially the Indian immigrant community, that they can actually participate in the democratic process. I mean, of course, we cannot vote, but that doesn't stop folks from engaging in conversations with their congressional representatives. And I find that many immigrants are not aware of these legislative fixes, for example, the per country cap bill, the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants bill that I talked about, or about the organizations that are working on advocating for it, for like Immigration Voice. Or sometimes they also have concerns that the status quo cannot change or will not change, and that has been the biggest impediment, actually.
So this is going to be my last question. So I would want to end it on a positive note. So could you share with us a story about your time at Ivy? One instance maybe, which
Yeah.
made all the work that you put in worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are, if I think about, there are a couple of instances that come to my mind. One is actually when I went to a town hall of a representative in the Bay Area, and after I spoke about the bill and the problems that I'm facing, many participants in the town hall actually stood in support of the issue, and then they convinced the representative to sign on to the bill, the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act, and that was very powerful. And another very important scenario was when I actually when I traveled to Washington D.C. as part of Ivy's advocacy efforts. I've seen many kids, who advocate for their parents and for themselves, and they're not afraid to stand up and demand equality and justice. And that's when I truly felt that it's all worth it, because if not for this generation, and we have taught the next generation to fight against inequality boldly, and that's when I know that we will win in this battle, because the arc of moral universe may be long, but it always bends towards justice.
Thank you, Gokul, for being part of this feature. I'm sure our audience actually gained a lot from this talk. And now also know that there's a Bitsin working to help them through this struggle, immigration struggle that we're going through. Also, a big thank you to everyone who tuned in today to listen to our podcast. Let us know if you're also part of some amazing initiative, and we'd be more than happy to feature it. I have to put a disclaimer. This was a sponsored podcast by Immigration Voice, and the views do not reflect the opinion of Bits International. But let's thank Gokul for coming on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.